Could the way we arrange our house change the way we feel, think, and even heal? Hello, my beautiful old souls, and a huge warm welcome back. In this show, I'm joined by Paula Robinson. As an intuitive interior designer, Paula understands the profound effect that the spaces where we live and work have on our health, happiness, and success in life. Often called the space whisperer, she helps people to create living and working environments that transform their lives on all levels. In this episode, Paula and I explore how our homes shape our bodies, minds, and lives, the primal ways space soothes or unsettles us, and the work of making a dwelling that heals. Together, we trace the path from head to heart, from trend to truth, from copybook rules to the felt sense of sanctuary. We journey through refuge and prospect, the simple power of moving a chair, and why bedrooms and workspaces ask for special care. Paula shares how intuitive design emerges, how objects carry the craft and energy of their makers, and how plants, animals, light, and air restore a room's vitality. At the heart of this conversation is a gentle invitation to listen to what our homes are already telling us, to let our instincts set the first mark, and then allow practicality to refine it. Beauty follows when a space begins to mirror the soul that lives there. Oh, and this conversation is one that really couldn't be dearer to my own heart. This was delicious. And so, before we jump into all of that good stuff, if you're struggling with the challenges of walking your soul path in this crazy modern world and would benefit from guidance, kinship, and support, then come join our Academy of the Soul Unio. You can find out more and join us by hopping on over to bemythical.com/unio or click the link in the description. And now back to this week's episode. Let's dive in. Hello, Paula. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Very excited to be here.
Oh my gosh. As I was saying to you, as we were talking before hitting record, it was one of those conversations like, I think we need to stop and start recording because
Yes.
we're just going to have a whole episode before we've even begun recording. But yes, this, as I've shared with you, the kinds of things we're talking about are just such natural loves for me, things that I think about all day long. And so having the opportunity to talk to someone else that shares those passions is beyond delightful to me. So I can't wait. So I am really intrigued. I've intentionally not asked you this. Where did it
Yes.
all begin? Where did your myth begin? And if there is anything that you can sort of see looking backwards, it began in childhood, begin
Yeah.
there. Because I always find that
Okay.
so fascinating.
Well, I would say it was awareness of space at a very, very young age. I think I was 18 months old, and I was having a nap in my room, it was enormous, and my mother had divided it with a bookcase, but the space felt frightening to me. It was too big. And that's an impression that has stayed with me throughout my life. So whenever I'm working with people with their nurseries, I'm always about look at it from the baby's point of view, the child's point of view, or animals is get down on the ground and look at the space from their size. So I would say that was the very first thing that struck me, and I've carried that throughout my life, the awareness of space. I was very lucky that my mother was incredibly creative. Any home we lived in, and we lived all over the world, lucky, she just could pull a home together. So I suppose I, learnt from her. And she had an amazing affinity with plants, and the house was always full of plants, and she talked to her plants and so on, and she was always moving the furniture. So I'd come home from school and the whole place would be rearranged and it was wonderful. And again, that was that awareness of space, that if you change the arrangement of furniture, it's like having a new home. You know, it's not new
Mm.
things, but it's a whole different feeling, and it's quite exciting. Um, so there was that. And
I must just share something. I won't tell you the rest of the story, but you just reminded me of something that um, past partners and my husband now always
mm,
have this kind of slight amusement, slight like, is this necessary? Whenever I go and stay anywhere on holiday, the first thing I do is have to rearrange the furniture.
I do it in hotel rooms.
I can't be here
Yes,
even
me
for a
too.
weekend with that table there. It just feels
Yes,
wrong. And yeah, it's
absolutely.
anywhere I go. And if I'm going to a friend's house, I manage to refrain from doing that. It's only
Sitting on your hands, yes.
yes. But yes, I completely understand what you mean there.
Mm.
But carry on, carry on.
Um, I had no intention of becoming a designer. Um, I loved working with people, and I wanted to be a psychologist. I wanted to be a child psychologist. And partway through my BSc, I realized that it didn't, rather, as you had said earlier about interior design, your experience of interior design when you wanted to go down that road, and then the all the drawings and the you know, the sort of must do side of it um puts you off. And I'll speak more to that later. But um the statistics, I was just like, wait a minute. 1 year you're proving one theory, 2 years later it's another theory, and that doesn't mean, just because you can statistically prove something does not mean that that's truth. So
Mm,
I had a problem with that, and I think I fell into interior design. Um, I opened a children's shop on the King's Road years ago, and everything was handmade in Britain. Um, and I didn't have a lot of money for renovations and so on, and had been a travel agent before. And there was this one unit that they had had all their leaflets in that couldn't be removed from the wall without pulling the entire wall down, and I couldn't afford a plasterer. So I sat there and stared at this thing and thought, what do I do with it? And then I got this vision of turn it into doll's house bookshelves because we could cut the very top. So it basically, we kept the majority of it, cut the very top, gave it the shape of a house. Where the walls were messed up, we did clouds and you know, so it all looked deliberate.
mm.
And people loved it so much, we got commissions to do it,
Wow.
to
If you have a
build them.
photo of that, I would love to see it.
Oh yes, 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 I do. And it was one of those, what do you do um with a problem? How do you transform a problem? And it was so much fun. It was like being a kid. And I
Mm.
think, but also when I was a kid, for instance, I loved fireplaces. We lived in New York in an apartment. We didn't have a fireplace. So I was determined to build a fireplace with my long suffering mother. We got brick contact paper, a box. And so I created this whole fireplace. I was very disappointed when I couldn't actually light a fire in it.
Oh, you would have loved my last house. We had 7 fireplaces, not all working. Some
Wow.
worked, some we didn't use, but 7.
Wow. Wow.
Your dream house right
Oh yes, absolutely.
there.
Absolutely. So I think um I rather fell into design from the shop
Mm,
and working with people. I didn't actually realize I was an intuitive designer until I'd been working for years in traditional design. I'd done show flats, I'd done, you know, all sorts, commercial. And I was working for a client in New York. And she was the one who spotted it because she was divorcing and she had two apartments, and one she was giving to her ex and one she was keeping for herself. And we met at a dinner party. She'd gone through three different designers. She was not happy. She'd sold all their antiques and furniture and so on. And she said, will you come and look at these two spaces? And I was actually leaving the next day for London, but I did go. I looked at hers and I just sat. She describes it as I sat there in silence for 15 minutes. And then I described this vision that she was just, oh my God, that's exactly what I want. And then
Mm.
she took me upstairs to meet her soon to be ex-husband, who was very gruff, very unhappy. He barely said hello to me. And I spent about 10 minutes in the apartment. And then I was doing the buying for them in the markets in Paris, which you would love if you've ever been to Clignancourt. It's heaven. It's like a massive toy shop. Um, and she came over from New York before everything was shipped. She loved everything for her place, but she was unsure about his. She's like, but is it Evan? And it was back in the days of Polaroids.
Mhm.
And she took Polaroids of all of these things and didn't dare show him when she went back, but she decided to ship everything anyway. And for some reason, he came sofa shopping with us in New York at Dialogica, and he was bored, senseless, and sitting in a corner. And I had chosen some stools and some very bright fabrics for his apartment. And Monique said, no, I'm sorry, Paula, you've gone too far. No, no. And from the other side of the showroom, he yells up, shut up, Monique. I love it. And she was absolutely floored. And apparently that evening she showed him all the Polaroids and he loved everything. And there were all sorts of things like there was a wine cooler that I got as a 1920s wine cooler that I'd seen that I was like, that's Evan. I didn't know the man from a bar of soap
Mm.
um, for a side table. And I didn't know he was a wine connoisseur, loved his
Oh,
wines. And there
wow.
were all these things. And the next day she took me out to lunch and she said, do you understand how you work? Like I'd done a window seat, created a window seat for her. She said, that's what I always wanted as a child. So it was just this,
Mm.
she said, you're working totally intuitively because everything you picked for Evan, he loves and is perfect. And he still he's moving the stuff to Greece to his latest place. He's kept it. So over the
Mm.
years. So I think that's where I found out, I'm not doing it the traditional interior design way.
Oh, I love that. I got chills just then. There's something so magical in the way that sometimes it can be our clients that reflect back to us who we really are and how we
Oh
work.
yeah.
There's such a great
Yeah.
example of that.
Yeah.
Really beautiful.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as you said earlier, I think, my own experience of interior design is
Mm,
emblematic really of our culture's understanding
exactly.
of these things. In
Yeah.
the I was sharing with you, and I don't think I've ever shared this story on the show before, but when my daughter, who's just turned 15, when she was a few months old, I was on maternity leave and I thought this is my opportunity to retrain and do something that I really love. So that was when I was back in my old corporate days. And I began this interior design training and was loving so much of the colors and the feelings and, the
Mm,
creativity. And then I just felt like I kept coming against this brick wall of numbers and,
mm,
measuring plans and all
Mm.
of that. And I just thought, this is not me. And there's a
Mm.
point at which you realize you're trying to push through something that just isn't meant to be pushed through. And
Yes.
so I stopped. And of course, I've ended up doing what I meant to do. But there was
Yes.
always this part of me, it's just like, there was definitely some connection with my soul and interior design,
Yes.
but not interior design as we know it. And I think
Yes.
linked to that, and I've heard you talk about this, there's that very kind of structural,
Mm.
planned way of interior design, very logical. And
Mm.
then there's our culture's obsession with, keeping up with the Joneses. And this is what the
Oh,
interior
yeah.
magazines are now saying is in. And everyone's going to paint their
Yes.
walls grey. And then they were going to paint their walls this color.
Yes.
And it all is missing the
Mm.
heart of what you were describing there, that
Mm.
you were doing on behalf of your clients, but actually is pointing to something deeper that's
Mm.
my own sense is at play for all of us, whether we're
Mm.
aware of it or not.
Absolutely. Well,
Mm,
and I think that the problem is when you approach an interior, when you start from your head instead of from your intuition and your heart, it's always going to look cold, and you're always going to be afraid to fail. So, and I've seen this with people so many times where I'm just like, just be a kid again. Just play. It's
mm,
okay. It doesn't matter. Let's put the sofa in that position. If it doesn't work, we'll have a jolly good laugh, and then we'll try something else. And then we'll find something that absolutely works. But I think people are so afraid of failing. They're
mm,
so afraid of, as you said, keeping up with the Joneses, thank you, design magazines. They're wonderful. And social media, there's some wonderful inspiration out there. But inspiration doesn't always come from seeing a picture of a living room, say, oh, I want my living room to look like
mm,
that. Inspiration can come from the silliest things, when you're on holiday and you see a beautiful color or a texture or a shadow on a wall or something, and something
mm,
inside you's going, pay attention to that
mm,
and follow it. Where does it lead? And I think this is something I've banged on a lot about in the book is, yes, the structural side of uh, design is essential. Of course it is. You've got to be practical. You've got, things have to fit, etc., etc. But you don't start there. You
mm,
start by being a little kid going, how would I like this to be? And you let that flow, and then you can be practical.
mm,
And I think people these days are so afraid of trusting their instinct, their intuition, and just allowing themselves to have fun.
mm,
Because so many places you walk into, people's homes, as you said, grey, this passion for grey. It's great for some people. Some people love grey. But what upsets me is when I see nurseries with grey. And it's
mm,
like, you haven't thought of that child and what they first see and what attracts. I mean, look at a baby. They're always reaching for
mm,
the brightly colored, shiny object. They're not reaching for the gray thing. There's enough gray in life, as you get older. Why inflict it on them when they're young, when you need that creation of magic and not creation of awareness of magic
mm.
um, in everything that you expose them to. But I think we've lost that in all the structure of how things are supposed to look. I remember an assistant, lovely assistant I had years ago, and she said to me, and she was going through training, and she said, but Paula, you can't put green and blue together. I can't remember what it was they told them. I'm like, Roz, what's that sky? What's that tree? Green and blue, the most natural combination in nature.
Everywhere in nature.
Never mind if they tell you you can't do it. If you feel it, do it.
Mm.
Um, and I think it's that starting from that point of it's okay to go a little crazy in your interior, and you can then refine it. But if you're starting from a point of view of being all straight laced and correct, and am I doing this right? And like you know, highly creative, and yet, you know, you start being put into that box and you're like, no, this is too much for me. I don't
Mm.
want to do this. And people will either, um, you know, give up and get someone else to do it, or, and they will be dictated to, you know, you have to do it this way. Um, and that's not how it works. I mean, when you're working with a client, it's a two-way thing. You have to feel them, you have to understand them, not necessarily have all the information and so on. I think if you're lucky enough to be very in tune, where you're an empath, you're very in tune with that, because not everybody is. um, it's very easy to quickly figure out how do you help somebody to transform their home into a sanctuary and into something that is going to be of real benefit for them.
Mm. Well, this is this has led me to something that I was just pondering because it's a bit like you're preaching to the converted, because everything you're talking about, I'm like, yes, 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 yes. And then I was pondering, actually, what you just said there, a sanctuary and something as a benefit,
Mm,
what would be really helpful is if someone's listening and they're like, well,
mm,
is it really that important what my house looks like? I'm not particularly interested in the interiors, as long as it's neat and
mm,
tidy and doesn't look absolutely horrendous. It's not really that important to
mm,
me. And I'd love you to share what you see is really available, the
mm,
impact our surroundings are having on us, for better or worse, because my
mm,
sense is when we're not aware of the impact of our surroundings, they are still exerting an influence,
mm,
but it's not necessarily an influence that we want, that's in alignment with
mm,
us. And conversely, when we are consciously creating our surroundings in a
mm,
way that is aligned for us and is supportive of us, it can have an incredible effect.
mm,
So I'd love you to share what are we really talking about here, because to me this isn't just surface level.
mm,
Whether
mm,
I hear what you're talking about in terms of the examples you've given, say, for example, with that client in the window seat. And I
mm,
know how there's all sorts in that, you know, inner child
mm,
stuff and soul stuff
mm,
and all sorts. But if someone doesn't know yet why this is so
mm.
important, I'd love you to share with them why it is, what's really at play.
Okay, what I would start with is, because there are a lot of people, as you said, who are like, I don't care what it looks like. You know, it really doesn't matter to me at all. What I would say is how it looks is part of it. But the most important thing of any interior is how it feels to you as you walk in. Have you ever had the experience of walking into a hotel or hotel room where you go, oh God, I need another room?
Mm,
It's trusting that feeling of, does this feel good to me? So for the person who's like, I really don't care what this looks like, as long as it's, as you say, neat, tidy, clean. But I would say, first of all, just check, when I walk into my home and when I walk into each room, taking the time to clear your mind, drop into your heart, and go, how does this feel? Because in all our homes, there are certain rooms or certain corners or certain spaces, and this changes over time as well, that feel a little off to you.
Mm.
And sometimes it's that whole, it's very hard with your own home because you're so used to it to see it or to feel it um, with fresh eyes, fresh
Mm.
senses. But if you can, I would say that is absolutely the most important thing is does your home and the spaces that you spend the most time in feel good to you? And to carry on from that, it's and everybody's different. I mean, I once had a client who wanted a bedroom with no windows. You know, it literally. um, Everybody, and there's certain things that yes, we all need. We need um, to be exposed to natural light. You know, when we're sleeping at night, we need not to have light, you know, for our circadian rhythm, not to interrupt that and not to have blinking, flashing things. And there are all sorts of things that, you know, will help you to lead a healthier, happier life. Um, but I would say I have seen this in so many people. Actually, I'm going to use a commercial example. Years ago in London, um, this company brought me in because they had a couple of employees who were not being productive, and and were having issue. They were having issues with. And I walked in and went, they both got their back to the corridor and everyone's walking past them all the time. They don't feel comfortable. Move them
Mm.
here. And as immediately their productivity went back up because there's certain things like if you have your back to and the people are walking past you don't feel safe. It's part of our primal being
Yes, yeah.
um, that we can't ignore, no matter how much logic tells you, no, no, I'm fine, don't worry about it. So I think we are all being very, very subtly affected by the spaces that we spend time in. And I think we've become very anesthetized by, I mean, particularly, you know, for instance, in the States, with all the box stores. And, you know, you go into, well, I mean, in England, you know, you go into Home Depot. I step into one of those and I want to hang myself. You know, those terrible lights, there's no fresh air, and unless you know, unless I have a list, I don't. You know, it's overwhelming,
Mm.
and overwhelming like all the spells and the you know, there's nothing that sparks the imagination, and we've become very accustomed to that. You know, going to the supermarket. So I think we've become desensitized a
Mm.
great deal. So when it comes to our own spaces, where we work, where we live, unless we're ill, for instance, I think a lot of people, when they're struggling with health issues, become a lot more aware of this because they're spending so much time in bed or in one place. Um, and it's important you, how your space feels to you, um, and that it is a healing space and it will improve your recovery. I mean, they've even done scientific studies of in hospitals, you know, patients who have a view of greenery and
Mm.
nature recover faster than people looking at concrete. And I mean, there are
Mm.
endless studies
Yes. Mm.
about that. Um, so I think it's um, I don't know, it's being aware within yourself of what you need, and everybody is
Mm.
different. And it's not, shutting out the noise of what everything is supposed to look like or be like or whatever. It's what brings you joy, what makes you feel excited when you sit at your desk or wherever you work or your standing desk or what every day. What brings you joy? What are you about? Um, and if you can incorporate that into your interior, I mean, rather like the example of me as a child and my obsession with fireplaces. I've had that obsession all my life, because I love sitting around a fire and talking
Mm.
or reading. Um, Again, I think that's primal. I don't know.
Yes. Well, it occurs to me that there's two aspects to this. There's that, as you say, a primal aspect that is
Mm,
in common to all of us, that to a large extent we've become desensitized to, we've overridden, we're not consciously aware of.
mm,
Um, and then there's that individual, unique soul
mm,
expression, which
mm.
also in our culture often doesn't get a look in. So, starting with the primal
No.
part
Yes.
first, what are the common ways you've seen that people could observe and put more into alignment so it does support those
Mm,
primal needs, and what would
mm,
provide a more healing,
mm,
um nourishing environment to be in?
mm. Well, in terms of primal, we all have a need for refuge and prospect. It goes back to our cave days of refuge, our cave, and prospect so we can see what is going on
Mm.
outside us.
Yeah, lovely way to
Um,
put it. Mm.
and how you arrange, for instance, your bedroom, where your bed is, you need to be able to. I mean, it's ideal if you have a view of a window out of a window. That's very calming. But you also need to be able to see the door coming in
Mm.
to the bedroom, because that gives you that sense of refuge prospect, and it's creating things that reinforce that. Because
Mm.
it's, very interestingly, I experienced it very profoundly. I've got an outdoor office as well. It's too hot to use at the moment, but um and it, well, the first time I sat in there, because of where it is, and there's a huge tree by it, so nobody can see me in it. I just felt my entire system drop. It was
Mm.
that strong of like, oh wow, I can see everything, and I feel safe and cozy. Nobody can get me here because nobody knows I'm here. So it
Mm.
was a very, very strong reaction. And also, the bedroom is very important because when we're sleeping, we need to be able to drop into deep sleep to heal. And if you always have this sort of sense of something's, oh, I don't know what's coming at me, there's a part of your brain that is still on alert.
Yeah, so
Um,
important actually. It really just dawned on me that this is what you're describing here is important all across the house, but in our bedroom in particular, where we truly are
mm,
going to need to be off guard, what you're
yes,
talking about is even more important. Mm.
yes. And obviously, as well, the living room. Um, so many living rooms are arranged around the television,
Mm.
and everything's focused towards the television. Um, and it makes such a difference, um, when I've done this with clients where I've just shifted some chairs facing a view in a cozy corner. And they're like, oh, wow, this is amazing. Now, they can't see the television, but they can go and watch that on the sofa. It's not everything. We're not living in, unless you've got your 100 closest friends coming round and everybody needs to focus on the screen, there have to be corners where you have other activities, where you can
Mm,
read or whatever you want to do, where you feel safe and cozy and you have a view. Um, and also where you work. That's highly, highly important. It is no good sitting with your back to somebody's coming from behind
mm,
you. You have to be able to see the door, to really just sort of drop your guard and really immerse in what you're doing. Because
mm.
otherwise, there's always a part of you going,
Yeah, subconscious part, but a very
mm,
powerful subconscious part. Really, really
yes,
beautifully said.
that you can't
Mm.
override.
Mm. So when you look at that more individual part, what do you feel? And so examples like the window seat or your as you
Mm,
say, I think your connection to fireplaces is somewhat primal as
mm.
well. I think we just
Yes,
all have that fascination to fire.
yes.
Um, we we have fires often, like in our garden. I think we've got three different
Mm,
kinds of like fire pits and things like that.
lovely.
And even on a hot day, the other evening, my mother-in-law was here, and I said to my husband, "Should we, after dinner, should we have a fire pit?" And all of us just sat there for
Mm,
hours around the fire,
mm,
just
mm.
chatting, dogs on laps. And I had one of those moments of like, this is what humans have been doing for
Yes,
most of human history. And
yes,
I love watching that, the way that we all kind of settle
yes.
down into something that's so natural to us. Um,
Mm,
and so I think again that there's something primal, but also probably
mm,
important for you in a way that I think is a
mm,
symbol um, that is for you. It's showing something to you about
mm,
you, which my sense is that's true for all of us, and that
mm,
I find fascinating. I remember years
mm,
and years ago. This was maybe even as long as 15 years ago. I read this article by I can't remember the chap's name. I'm gonna I'll remember it and I'll pop it in the show notes. I don't know if he still
mm,
is even about, but I want to credit him and I can't remember his name in this moment. But
mm.
no, I can. Steve Pavlina. It's just come. He was kind of in
Okay.
the early days of the self development world and one of the very first bloggers. And I read this article
Mm,
and it was about priming your mind.
mm-hmm,
And really simple but so powerful. And he was saying what you surround yourself with is speaking to you at that subconscious level all the
mm.
time. And so he was saying, the pen that you have on your desk, or this
Yes.
that you have in your awareness. And because of I have that natural passion for what I surround myself with, it really spoke to
Mm,
me. It was like the first time I'd
mm,
really heard someone talk about it from that place.
mm,
And I I see there is, I guess, a sort of generic way we can approach that, but there
mm,
is this it's soulful way we can approach this. Really
mm,
listening to what is it that is speaking to us individually. And
mhm,
my sense is, and I'd love to hear your sense of this,
mm,
it has this. Let's just choose an example for the moment, and this could be,
mm,
a number of different things. Um, say for example I have this heart rose
mm,
quartz that someone bought me
mm,
many years ago. Me having that in my awareness is speaking to me at the subconscious
mm,
level all the time. It's
mm.
reflecting me to me,
Yes.
and it calls more of me forward, invites more
Mm,
of me. That's what I
mm,
see as possible when we begin to create our surroundings in that
mm,
way, that is
mm.
specifically speaking to our soul, as an expression of our soul and a reflection of our soul all at once.
Absolutely.
I would love to
Absolutely.
hear your sense, because I have a sense that's what you're really getting to in some of these examples that are very individual.
Yes. Um, just backtracking a moment to the fire. Um, again, primal, and you know this as a storyteller, how we learnt as human beings before writing was story, sharing story. That so the fire is in us is an association of learning and growing.
Mm.
and of community, because it's not just your story, your myth, it's the communal.
Yes.
Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing of how we choose objects as well, or maybe how they choose us or how they speak to us, is it's on several levels. Because, for instance, your rose quartz in the heart shape has been carved. Somebody carved that. So there again, there's a community there. There's a communion going on, because the energy of the person who created that, beyond, I mean, it's on several levels, because obviously
Mm.
it's the connection, to the earth, because anything that we're drawn to that is natural, it's our connection to the earth. And we're so disconnected in so many ways now. I think the vast majority of people spend 95% of their time indoors, where that's not our nature.
Mm.
But I digress there. So I think you're associating with something. It's the physicality of it, and there is an association that you may or may not be aware of. But when it's something that has been crafted, um, there is that person's energy in it as well.
Mm.
Um, does that
Yes. Hmm.
resonate? Um, so I think it, it is that trusting your instinct, because sometimes, actually, another example of me as a kid, I don't know how my parents put up with it, but we were in Scotland, and I found this huge, great rock, and I insisted on taking it home with me to New York, because this rock spoke to me, and bless them, they agreed. I mean, anyway.
Fabulous
Um,
parents.
yes, they were. They were. Um, so sometimes it's that you don't know why something is speaking to you, and it doesn't actually matter. But yes, as you say, it actually helps you to bring out more of who you are. And um, if you surround yourself with things that speak to you, and you're like, I don't know why I'm choosing this, but oh, okay. I think with the fullness of time, it you start to discover, you start to it's because it's story. It is,
Mm.
your own story is emerging with, I mean, this was something that, we touched on together, is the story of things, because everything has a story. We look at people and say, we're very aware because of aging and so on, their past, their present, and their potential future. But everything has a story. And
Mm.
I think that if you become more aware of that, um, we're less inclined to just throw things away, just like, oh, who cares? Just throw it out. And obviously it's harder to do with mass produced things versus, if you have something like that beautiful rose quartz. And I think as humans, what we are, our evolution and everything that in our individual lives and as a whole, it's all about story unfolding and being aware of the story of others and of other, you know, everything else that inhabits our world, especially trees.
Mm.
Because if you're aware of story, you're less inclined to chop a tree down.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. There's so much I could say in response to that, but I'm
Mm.
recognizing the time's flown by,
Mm.
and There's something I want to ask you before we close. If someone's
Mm,
listening, and what I'm wondering is whether there are, how can I put this? So, the way I've chosen the last two houses we've lived in, or we've chosen the
mm,
last two houses we lived in, were very much from the place you're describing. With
mm,
very intuitive
mm,
feeling that this is where we're meant to be.
mm,
And I was talking, funny enough, to a client yesterday about that. That's the same way as we chose schools for our children, completely putting logic and practicalities and, this is what makes sense to one side, and
mm.
first feeling. And
Brilliant.
so it gives you a great start if you've managed to choose your home from that place, and
Mm,
then everything you're describing can kind of build on that foundation of it being the right feeling from the first place. If someone's pondering, like, I'm not sure, for whatever reason, I'm in a
mm,
circumstance where I don't really feel like I chose it, or
mm,
it didn't have that feeling, but practicalities dictated
mm,
I lived here.
mm.
What would you suggest there? Do you feel there are some sort of fundamental disconnects where a place isn't right for us? Or can this be addressed? What would you say to someone wondering this?
Um, I think well, there are degrees of it. If you feel extremely disturbed in your house and you're not sleeping, then I think it's a case of, and you can't move, you're stuck with it for whatever reason. That's when you need to have um, a space clearing to help clear the energy, and that's a whole other
Mm.
topic. Um, I do think
And
that
from that,
if you're,
you mean more from say, a shamanic perspective?
yes,
Hmm.
yes, and space clearing is highly effective. It really,
Hmm.
really is. Um, if you're on the spectrum of, oh, I've kind of had to move into this place and it's not really my cup of tea and this, that, and the other, and it's not your, as they say, forever home, I think you can still make it feel better and more you by addressing what you can change within it, whether it's the arrangement. Again, it's going back into the, okay, so walk through the front door and go, okay, how does this make me feel? And if you feel overwhelmed, it's breaking that down of what is making me feel overwhelmed. What are the um, things that I could try to change it in terms of the arrangement of the space. Um, and also it's introducing elements of, because we all have things that we absolutely love. Um, even small, just small things like your rose quartz example. Um, things that, people talk about creating an altar, and that's about things that you have an affinity to, and that you can turn to, and it brings you a sense of peace. I think you can do that with your home. um I would say one of the things that will definitely help any space is plants, live
Hmm.
plants, um having flowers, um airing the space regularly, opening the windows, opening the doors, creating, if you don't have enough light in a space, use mirrors to reflect light. Or if you can use glass surfaces again, because they reflect light, because there are a lot, I think living in dark places is a challenge to
Mm.
most people. And we were talking about earlier animals, the difference that animals make to a
Mm.
space. They really, really do change the energy of a space. Um, I think it's starting small, particularly if it's not your forever home, trying to identify, why doesn't this feel good to me? And this is something I go into in the book, in the beginning, what isn't working is it actually, and it helps a lot of people to make lists.
Mm,
And it's very interesting to refer back to, because then you can tackle, okay, the entrance hall it's cluttered. It just feels as though it's coming at me when I walk through the front door. Then the practical thing, what can I do to improve that? Um, and I think it's very hard when you're in a temporary situation. But as you and I were both saying, is, we go somewhere on holiday or to a hotel room and we're rearranging furniture. Now, most
mm.
people would think we're barking mad, but, it makes us feel better. And I don't think people really credit how much moving furniture helps, because also what you're
Mm,
interrupting is traffic patterns, because we all get used to, we walk from the sofa to the kitchen to our bedroom in a set traffic pattern. And when
mm.
you move furniture,
Which then
you're
makes us less
interrupting
and
the
less
pattern.
conscious. Yes, it's like we become
Yes.
more and more automatum, can't see these things, can't feel these
Yes.
things. Mm,
Yes. And
yeah, I
also,
love
if
that.
you've been unhappy in a space, or it's negative associations, changing up the arrangement. I mean, it can be as simple as taking a chest of drawers that is straight on and moving it cat a corner. It's
Mm,
the littlest things. It's all about change. I suppose, if going back to story, if you look at, okay, what's the story of my home at the moment? Oh, it's an awful story. Want to close the book,
mm.
put it away. All right, how could I change that? How could I edit it to make it a story that I actually enjoy reading?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Which I feel like we might need to come back and do an episode 2 actually, because I realised what I'm about to
Oh,
ask
that
you
would
is
be fun.
it's opening up a whole other chapter of this story. So I'm going to say this briefly, but
Mm,
I do think this is a whole other episode. Um, because I've tended to live in very old houses, they have
mm,
a long story of their own, as
mm,
well as the inhabitants of the home.
mm,
And I've really seen how understanding that story of the home allows us
mm.
to kind of co-create with it in a whole other way. So
Yes,
I'm not going to say anything more about that because I think that is a whole other episode. So I
that
will
would be a
stop
really fun
there.
episode.
Yes. Um, a funny memory just came back to me hearing what you were saying about how we, even if we're somewhere temporarily, the changes we can make. And I remember I've got this photo of when I was a teenager. I went Greek island hopping with my best
Mm,
friend at the time, and there's this photo, and it's so funny because it's so symbolic of everything we were talking about, where she just had a sleeping bag. We're sharing a tent. She just had a sleeping bag, and she's naturally quite messy, so she had a
mm.
rucksack with her clothes everywhere. And my side, I'd intentionally I'd intentionally brought this scarf, this floral scarf. And so I had my bed all neat. And then I had my rucksack. And then over the rucksack, I placed this scarf to make it, it was almost like an altar. And then I
Mm.
brought a framed photo that was on this scarf. And
Oh,
it was all kind of like laid out like this kind of like miniature little, I don't know, sitting room or something, or bedroom. It
oh,
was.
I loved that.
And of course we were hopping, so we were like moving from place to place, I don't know how many times in the space of these weeks, and yet each time I'd construct this
Yeah,
elaborate interior.
past life as a nomad, because women
Of course, yes, yeah.
craft the interior
Mm,
of, and it's everything is in very set positions, even though they're moving, and the interior is always beautifully crafted. So I mean, that's just you know, total nomadic culture. That's wonderful.
My little bit of Siberian DNA speaking through me
I
there.
love that.
But yes, what
I love that.
testament to what you were saying, and like even somewhere we're very temporarily at, the
Mm.
difference we can make, and we can create it to be a space that's actually nourishing to us.
Yeah, and it's the
Mm,
little detail of, as you said, just a scarf over concealing the rucksack
mm,
and creating it creates a focal point. It gives you a sense of joy and rest and yeah, perfect.
mm. Well, thank you for bringing back that memory. I just had that kind of visual. I haven't actually got a photograph of it.
I'd love to see the
Anyway, now I'll dig that
photo.
out and I'll show you mine if you
Uh,
show me your photo of
yes,
your children's bookcase.
yes, absolutely.
Where can listeners find out more about you and your wonderful work, and of course your book, which I do have myself?
Mm. Oh, bless. Thank
Mm.
you. So my website is www.paularobinson.com. And the book is called The Healing Home and Garden, Reimagining Spaces for Optimal Well-being.
Wonderful. And again, I would so recommend listeners, if they hear something in this,
Mm,
go find out more about what you do. I think it's absolutely wonderful. This has been such a delight. And again, I think we've got
lot of
another
fun.
episode in us, so we'll
Yeah,
come
I
back and
think so.
do that soon. Thank you so much, Paula.
Thank you. It's been wonderful, Leanne. Really enjoyed it.
What a delightful show. Paula is such a gem. Here were my favourite parts. Start with a feeling and then refine with form. Notice how each room lands in your body. Create refuge and prospect by seeing both the door and the view. And then let measurements and plans serve what already feels right. Small changes shift everything. Rearrange to interrupt stale traffic patterns, personalize even temporary spaces, and enliven rooms with plants, natural light, fresh air, mirrors, and the quiet presence of animals, or not so quiet always in my case. Design as living story. Choose objects that speak to you. Honor their makers and materials. And when a house feels unsettled, consider energetic space clearing so the home and its history can move with you rather than against you. If you'd like to hop on over to the show notes for the links, they're at bemythical.com/podcast/517. And there's a very special offer from Paula that you'll find on those show notes. And if you're struggling with the challenges of walking your soul path in this crazy modern world and would benefit from guidance, kinship, and support, come join our Academy of the Soul Unio. You can discover more and join us by hopping on over to bemythical.com/unio, and we will walk the path home together. If you don't want to miss out on next week's episode, head on over to your favorite podcasting app or platform of choice, including YouTube, and hit that subscribe or follow button. That way, you'll get each episode delivered straight to the device auto-magically as soon as it's released. Thank you so much for listening. You've been wonderful. I'm sending you all my love. I'll catch you again next week. And until then, go be mythical.